When life gets unpredictable, preparation matters. In medicine, it's all about staying alert, ready for whatever comes through the door. On the road, it's no different. That's why Volvo designs vehicles to help anticipate risk, reduce harm, and protect lives. The Volvo XC90's advanced safety systems inspire confident decisions wherever the road takes you. The Volvo XC90, for life. Proud sponsor of the Pit Podcast. Learn more at volvocars.ca/safety.
Welcome back to the Elias Macko Show. Class action lawsuit filed against Facebook going ahead after being approved by the Quebec Court of Appeal. The lawsuit claims that Facebook allowed advertisers to discriminate on the basis of gender, race, and age. The social media giant could face thousands of Quebec residents who have used Facebook since 2016 and who were looking for jobs or housing during that time period. The case will hone in on micro-targeting ads that are designed to ensure they only appear in the Facebook feeds of people who belong to the groups being targeted. With more on this, we go to Audrey Boctor, a lawyer with the Montreal law firm IMK. They're behind the class action lawsuit. Audrey, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so let's talk about this a little further here because, you know, when I think about this and when I think about micro-targeting, you know, I don't know exactly how I feel on it. Like when I think about, let's say, doing an advertisement for an apartment and micro-targeting there, it makes me feel icky. I feel like it's wrong. But then sometimes when I think about maybe a job where perhaps a profession is predominantly women or predominantly male, let's say, and an employer wants to save money so they do some targeting, I'm not so sure how I feel about that. So why don't you tell our listeners here this micro-targeting, what this is all about?
Well, I mean, I take your point, but I think the baseline is that you're not allowed to discriminate in areas of housing or employment. Mm-hmm. So even if you have professions that might tend to be predominantly occupied by certain ages or certain genders, you can't discriminate against others. You could never say in a job ad, women need not apply, older workers need not apply. And what's happening here is you know, by allowing employers to only target the ads to certain groups, others are being excluded from even knowing that the opportunity exists. So it's not because jobs tend to be occupied by certain people that you can deliberately exclude others from having that job.
So I guess this is where, you know, the questions come up for me. So, you know, let's say a job is posted on a website, right? And if that job were to say, we only want certain people, then I would see, you know, I definitely see that case. But for me, this is, you know, an advertising, which is a link to that job posting, which is open to all. And that same job can be found by anyone if they do a Google search or if they're looking for jobs, right? So is this like, you know, that's to me where it gets murky, right? So is that right on like that to see that advertising? Is that a right or is that up for debate?
Well, I think it's what you raise it's an interesting question. But when we talk about targeting advertising on the Facebook platform, you know, Facebook is a platform that regroups millions of users. The whole force in it, you know, its power is that it is able to reach so many people. And what happens when targeting occurs on the platform is that you are not eligible to see the ad. So the idea that you could just simply do a Google search and find it, well, that may be if it is advertised somewhere else. But if, for example, the ad's only sent out on Facebook, or if Facebook is the biggest platform out there, so if people are not able to see it in other means and they are being excluded on Facebook, then they're not actually seeing the ad. So the difference in if you place an ad in a magazine, anybody can go and buy that magazine. But here, when you deliberately exclude groups, they just aren't getting the opportunity to see it.
So who would be, you know, like almost everyone's on Facebook, right? And I would imagine that almost everyone has at one point seen an ad on Facebook that was targeted towards them in their specific profile, right? So I guess the question I have is, would everyone be a part of this class action lawsuit?
Well, seeing the ads is not the problem, right? It's being excluded from seeing the ads. And, you know, as a result of investigations in the U.S. and of this class action that was brought here in Quebec, Facebook actually changed its practice somewhat and said that it would remove the targeting options in employment and housing and create a library whereby you could go and access the ad. Mm-hmm. So that helps for the future, but it doesn't fix the damage that was created in the past. The other thing the class action targets is even when there's no more specific targeting options chosen by the employers, Facebook's algorithm pushes ads out to users whom they think their interests will align with the ad. So even when the employers are not choosing the targeting options that had been put at their disposal, the ads are nonetheless being pushed out in what we say is a discriminatory fashion.
We're with Audrey Boctor, a lawyer with the Montreal law firm IMK. They've launched a class action lawsuit that's been approved by the Quebec Court of Appeal against Facebook on micro-targeted advertising. So, Audrey, what are you seeking here in this lawsuit? For all of those in that defined time period that were affected by this, what are you seeking?
So, we're seeking damages, compensation for the class members, an injunction to prohibit the practices from continuing, and punitive damages.
And Audrey, the fact that Facebook has changed their policy since, does that give you like some good ammunition in this case, that the fact that they have changed their policies?
Well, I mean, my view of that is that it is a recognition of the problem. Of course, Facebook will say that, no, they simply changed it, not because it was necessarily wrong, but because they just made a decision to change it. Mm-hmm. But, certainly that's an indication to me that there was a problem. But I should clarify that they removed the specific targeting options, but they haven't modified the algorithm, which is still problematic.
Ah, understood. Okay, and that algorithm, what does it do that makes it problematic for our listeners?
So algorithm discrimination is when an algorithm, as in here, will specifically push ads out to users based on characteristics, even where that's not what the employer chose to do. So it's Facebook's algorithm determining who are the best matches for those ads. And, in some situations that might be entirely unproblematic and even beneficial and as part of the force of Facebook's platform. But when it comes to employment and housing and those ads being pushed out in a fashion that excludes others from those opportunities, that's where we run into problems with the Quebec Charter.
Audrey, I've got a pickle of a question thrown at me from a listener on our text line, okay? And I do find it very interesting. So, listener writes this: well, what if I'm advertising a retirement home? I can't target seniors on Facebook? And that to me is an interesting question, right? So, that's housing. That you don't want you're throwing away money if you targeted an 18-year-old for a retirement home. So is that different from the kind of targeting that you have an issue with, or would you lump that all in together?
Well, that's different. If there's a bona fide requirement to access that housing, which is that you must be of a certain age, then that's obviously a different situation.
Okay, gotcha. So that would be different here. So where are we at in this lawsuit, right? So it's just been approved by the Quebec Court of Appeal. Can you go through timelines here?
So now, once a class action is approved, it has to go back to the Superior Court and proceed as any other action would. So, we need to do discoveries and gather all the evidence and set down a date for trial. So it is, we're probably a few years away from a judgment on the merits. And Facebook could, of course, decide to seek leave to the Supreme Court. And if they do that, then we'll answer in due course. But we haven't heard whether they will do so.
There have been cases like this in other jurisdictions. Is there anything that you can take from cases maybe that have happened south of the border in the U.S. or European Union or somewhere else that either makes your case or something that you got to tackle with when it comes to this Quebec class action?
Well, there have been investigations that have concluded in settlements. So, I think that the fact that other regulators have have been extremely preoccupied by this conduct, I think is. It reassures us that we should also be preoccupied about it.
It's very interesting because I love class action lawsuits, right? I've received money for ginger ale, for bread, for DVD optical drives. Like, I love this stuff. I buy a computer 20 years ago, and then 20 years later, I get $100. I love it, right? So I'm on team class action lawsuit. But for this one here, given the scope, given how almost everyone's on Facebook, would everyone on Facebook, if this, the best case scenario for you, give me a best case scenario, what happens in this case?
So the definition of the group is Facebook users in Quebec who were looking for housing or employment and who were interested in in housing and employment advertisements, and by reason of either race, sex, or age were excluded by Facebook's advertising services between April 11, 2016 and the present. So there are some some limiting factors there. It's people who were looking for housing and employment and were interested in receiving those ads on Facebook.
But couldn't anyone say they were looking for employment during those years and qualify? I mean, couldn't anyone say that?
Anytime there's a claims process, anyone can say that they owned a computer, but they no longer have the receipt. Anytime there's a claims process, there's some type of verification mechanism that goes along with that. So it's not really a problem unique to this action. Well,
Audrey, listen, thanks for coming on the program. I'll be following the progress of this class action lawsuit. It really is a fascinating story and a fascinating case here. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much for having me.
That's Audrey Boctor, a lawyer with the Montreal law firm IMK. They've launched this class action lawsuit against Facebook.